You are watching the #1 podcast in the whole entire youth wrestling community, and I'm your host Juan. So this time riding solo. You know, family, we always talk about all the episodes that the Broken Skull sessions give us with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and this time is no exception. We're going to be talking about the Godfather, Charles Wright, you know, like one of the greatest figures in the Attitude Era. We're going to be talking about every single thing that you need to know about this episode. Pretty interesting, maybe not for every single fan of professional wrestling, maybe not for the casual fan, but like if you enjoy the Attitude Era, if you enjoy the 90s, you know, the Godfather, like he played a lot of characters. We're going to be talking about the origins of every single one of them. So thank you for being with us. Hope that all of you are having a great time, and don't forget to please subscribe to the channel, and you know, also like follow us on the social media world and give the video a like. Also, like we put content all the time, so hit the bell on so like you can always be exposed to the original road break. Also, don't forget to follow us here with this video. Support us with like the Smackdown review. Roman Reigns, you know, the head of the table, the tribal chief, he does not tolerate failures. So he's talking about like how like Jimmy and Jey Uso like lost their match against the Mysterios for the tag titles, and you see how like he's really want to stay with Jey because Jimmy cannot acknowledge him. He does not want to embrace that vision. So you know, like there's still dissension and like this family affair still going on, you know, in SmackDown. So please support us with this. You know, we have all the coverage of this show. Liv Morgan like fighting against Carmella. Also, you know, Seth Rollins with an exclusive interview that turned out to be a complete failure. Intercontinental Championship match with Kevin Owens and Apollo Crews. So, you know, stay with us for that. Check us out. Let us know what you guys feel about this show on SmackDown. Also, AEW Dynamite family, El Ídolo Andrade. El Ídolo is now All Elite. Finally, you know, he debuted on AEW Dynamite yesterday on Friday. And you know, pretty interesting show where it's gonna be like all the fallout for what it went on Double or Nothing. You know, besides Almas, also we got to see Kenny Omega and Jungle Boy. They're gonna be actually pushing that match that they're gonna have in 2 weeks. It's actually gonna be in 3 weeks, and it's gonna be on June 26th. You know, more interesting things with the Inner Circle and also the Pinnacle. They're gonna still fighting within each other. You know, the show lays a lot of work. Mark Henry was also there. Sting, you know, the same stuff. Celebration with Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. So be with us, you know, for all this video also. You know, Jean Paul is just on doing other assignments, so that's why I'm solo right now, family. But now let's go talk about the Godfather, or like Charles Wright, because he debuted in wrestling. They touch upon, you know, the early beginnings. He just was a member of, you know, like the biking clubs. Like that's how he encountered professional wrestling. Like he was pretty much a member of the nightlife, a lot of like strip club work, you know, beating a bodyguard and all of that because he was huge, like 300 pounds, really tall guy, and that's why like he's the beginnings of his work in professional wrestling as the Soul Taker. That was his first character that didn't really go in the WWE, but that's how like in the independents, and that's how he started riding with the Undertaker. He became best friends with the Undertaker. We're gonna go and touch upon that in a little later, but also like you guys can see that big patch in his chest that's one of the signs that belonged to the biking club that he was sparring. So he mentions that he touched upon how like he was never like a big wrestling fan. Wrestling was always like a business. It was something that he was not a mark for, and he uses the word mark. That was really cool to see like the honesty of Charles Wright, and then you know later on he will become the Godfather. But that's how he really initiated his, you know, runnings in the business. Memphis with Jerry Lawler, Stone Cold Steve Austin. They said they have a few matches, how they tag, how the one time Stone Cold actually slammed him, and you know, without notice, without saying it to him. So he said, "Hey man," we went to the back, and he's like, "Well, please, you know, don't never do that again unless I know about it." So, you know, you saw a lot of things like that, and then they go finally to the Papa Shango character, like the beginnings and the origins of it. And he's like, finally, Vince McMahon gets a hold of him. They hire him, and they said, "But like your face is like really, you know, nice. You're a handsome man. You know, it's like you have a baby face, so we got to do something with it. So we're gonna cover it." And he's like, "Have you ever seen the movie Live and Let Die?" And that's why they're gonna play this voodoo character that ended up being Papa Shango. And he said, "You know what? This company is gonna pay me, so I'm gonna do the best for them. I'm gonna try my best to make sure that like, you know, they get what they want from me." So that's why they became with Papa Shango. You know, the voodoo guy, how he will like shake like, you know, like the cross, the necklace that he had, and then they had the big rivalry with the Ultimate Warrior. He'll end up, you know, missing his cue in WrestleMania in the main event when Psycho Sid and also Hulk Hogan are fighting. So he had a pretty decent run at the beginning. You know, he had a championship opportunity with Bret Hart also. So this character had a lot of potential, and he was a pretty decent wrestler. Like not the greatest thing in the world, but at least he was able to pull matches. But because he was still new in the business, sometimes he will miss the cue like he did on, you know, on that time. And then, you know, this character turned out to be like the first impression or like the best exposure that we had as the WWE audience to the Godfather, or like in this case Papa Shango. But you know, the character goes well and doesn't really resonate a lot. I mean, a lot of people like the character, never really went to big heights. He mentions in the interview that like every time that he felt that like he wasn't having fun anymore, he will say, hey man, hey Vince, you know, I can even go back to the Vegas scene, you know, the clubs, the strip clubs, the nightlife. He said I can make $3,000, $4,000 because I'm a bodyguard. So it's like, you know, you don't have anything for me, I can just always leave. So that's how, like, you know, Papa Shango, the character, ended up dying. Really never resonated with the crowd. I think, like, you know, the main thing that he had was the rivalry with the Ultimate Warrior. He reveals how, like, the Black Ooze always came out and they say they had a tube with, like, the ooze on it, and then they will just, like, press a button and then, like, the exposure of liquid will come out. So that will say that that's the only thing that, like, people will remember Papa Shango, like, just the rivalry with the Ultimate Warrior, how, like, he will shake, like I said, the necklace and all of that, and then the Ultimate Warrior ended up throwing up. He will like get like all these spells from Papa Shango. So that was like his first character, his first deviation that he had in the WWE. And then, you know, we get to see like there was a pitch idea that we're going to talk about in just a little bit, or like they wanted to bring the character back, you know, in more like a serious tone. And then they said that like he was in the best shape of his career, he was ready to take Papa Shango to new levels. But unfortunately, things always change in the WWE. You know, like this is a picture that I sent you, is like how good he could have been. You know, he said like I was like really ready to have like this big exposure. They were gonna give me this great push, and you know, you see like how like the mask or like the, you know, the makeup that they did, like they actually make it a little better or more serious, like more like a mean character. He was gonna be a heel, and then you see like also this was the work of Jerry Lawler. So Jerry Lawler had a lot of faith in like what it was like Papa Shango or Charles Wright, and that's what they were gonna do. But unfortunately, you know, change the plans also have to change in the WWE. And then the day that he shows up to work and he gets these pictures taken, they said, hey, Vince wants to talk to you. The plans end up changing, and now he actually becomes part of the Nation of Domination. You know, like that was a bit really kind of down thing for him. There was a low point in his life at the beginning because of, hey, you know, I wanted my singles push, I wanted to be portrayed better, you know, I wanted to have this big opportunity. But no, now he's going to be a member of the Nation with Ron Simmons, with Farouk, D'Lo Brown, and The Rock. And he mentions that the way that like they laid him out for this, it was just to like help The Rock to go over. He says, you know, Dwayne Johnson is like this kid, people shit on him because of The Rock, he might be a character, but you know, with the help of all three of you, we're gonna push this kid to the moon, and he's gonna end up being like the greatest thing in professional wrestling, which it turned out to be, right? And also like this beneficiated all of them, because all of them actually turned out to go in different paths, and they actually, this Nation of Domination was the stepping stone for all of them. So like he mentions that it was really cool to learn from Farouk, from Ron Simmons, like, you know, he's like a very big name in professional wrestling, the first African American to win the World Heavyweight Championship in WCW. So that was really cool, and this group was like really important to, you know, solidify the Attitude Era also. Like it was really cool like for these guys. So you know, they mentioned that how like even Mark Henry was part of this, you know, so like they actually were able to get this group over, and till this day they weren't trying to resemble that, they weren't trying to replicate it when it comes to the Hurt Business. Bobby Lashley, Cedric Alexander, MVP, all of them trying to replicate the success of the Nation of Domination. So that was really great, and he says that was a really high point in his life once the situation started going, and then The Rock also like started taking off, because like they were always like the bodyguards for like The Rock. He won the Intercontinental Championship, and they were taking like the Stone Cold Stunner because he got into a feud with Stone Cold, and that was like the stepping stone, like I said, to what we were going to be the highlight of the Attitude Era family. Also, they mentioned, like, you know, his friendship with Yokozuna. He says one of the greatest guys ever. Actually took shots with Stone Cold. He says that, like, you know, he was a big country fan. That is something that we don't know about the Godfather. And he says that, like, he was riding with Yoko, he was riding with The Undertaker, you know. They were all really cool, close friends. So, like, he was playing, like, country music. And then you got to see, like, Yokozuna, like, he looks at him and then he takes out the cassette. Because, you know, during those days, there was no CD or anything like that. He takes out of the cassette of, like, the country song that he had, and then he threw the cassette away. And then, you know, the Godfather says, what are you doing that, man? He's like, hey, nobody told you that you're African American. Nobody told you that you're black. So, you know, a really cool story that, like, he mentions, and that's why he had, like, the shirt, like, honoring Yokozuna. You know, really good friends, and everybody, like, even when you guys saw the episode of Icons of Yokozuna, you guys can tell how good, like, a person he was. Everybody loved him. You know, everybody respected him. He's a really loss that we had in the professional wrestling world with the death of Yokozuna. He mentions also how he got in the business, like, a lot of, like, anecdotes with The Undertaker, like, how, like, they fought, and it was, like, the worst match ever. And how, like, that rivalry kind of like that they had at the beginning turned out to become one of the closest friendships that he has, because he's really good friends and close to The Undertaker. So that was really cool to hear from, like, you know, Charles Wright. He really loved that. Then they mentioned Kama. Kama was actually like the vignettes from him were really, really good because he was actually saying that he was going to be a boxer. He was actually better than Mike Tyson during those days. He was really big, you know, on the boxing world. So like he had a pretty promising run. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out to be anything. He actually had only like a good rivalry with The Undertaker. That turns out to be like a casket match. That was it. Then he became part of the $1 Million Corporation with Psycho Sid and Ted DiBiase, but really never, again, resonated with the crowd. He said he tried the best of it, and I could believe him. You know, he was a big 300-pounder man, and he tried to have good matches, which some of the cases will turn out to be okay. But unfortunately, like again, neither of these characters, you know, Papa Shango or now Kama, became really anything. And you know, Colonel Kama or Colonel, like he and the Nation of Domination, he was okay, but again, he wasn't part of like a main thing. He was just one of like the sidekicks of The Rock and also the Ron Simmons. So that's why this Kama character, like I said, he was actually again in another good shape of his life, but didn't really turn out into be anything or like a main event program for him. But then after this, then is when we'll actually see something better. And once again, he's tired. He doesn't want to like be in the business anymore. He said, I can also go back to like the topless girls, you know, all of that, the strip club area, the strip club scene, all of that. And then he says his wife actually was the one that came out with this character of the Godfather. Like I was saying before, family, Godfather's wife is the one that comes out with the whole gimmick. It's like, why don't you try to be just a babyface pimp? It's like just accentuate how you are, your personality, you're really fun to be around. And he says, well, I don't know about that. And it's like, yeah, you're gonna love it. And she's the one that came out with the flannels. She came out with like the designs of like the jewelry and all of that. So he says that like the most important person in developing the Godfather is actually his wife. He says WWE didn't have anything to do with this because he was actually fighting John Bradshaw Leadville, and they said that like these matches were like the popcorn matches. So the ones that you know, it was just the intermission for people to just go grab a snack and then get ready for like the main events, and that's what they were trying to do at that time. But he said they wanted to do something different, and they started incorporating these things of the Godfather, incorporating the women and all of that. So like actually they became like the reaction was instantaneous with him. You know, they said like overnight people are actually loving this, and then Vince McMahon saw it and he's like, hey, maybe can you bring some women here? Can you bring some girls? Undertaker and him went to one of the strip clubs nearby. They brought all the women and they had the whole train, and the Godfather became absolutely a great thing, and it was really entertaining. And he said a line that is really important. He mentions Vince. Is like, they already, like the crowd is already used to seeing wrestling. How about you let me entertain them? And once again, we've been saying this throughout all the shows that we do, family. When you play a character that is an extension of yourself, then you can actually be more successful, for it's just a part of you. And that's what happened with Charles Wright. They became the Godfather. Turned out to be like a really, really key figure in what it was the Attitude Era Succeed. Because, you know, this kind of like things, racy and like pushing the envelope a little bit, like was actually needed during those days, you know, 97, 98, 99, when like people were actually really loving to push the envelope and just to go to heights that maybe nobody has ever reached out before, or looking in places like ECW, you know, like talking about like sex, also like racy things, topics that nobody would really touch. That's what professional wrestling did, and the Godfather was like a key figure for that, because again, a pimp, being babyface, and on top of that just bringing girls, whole train, he mentioned all those words, so like pimping ain't easy, all of those things, like absolutely great, the Godfather. But then he goes to like one of his lowest points, and the lowest points, you know, because the Godfather only could go so long. So long because like again, you know, censorship associations, they were actually trying to get this character to be, you know, out of the TV, because again, you know, pimp, talking about like sexual prostitution, all of that, because what was the main thing of the Godfather? Like he didn't want to wrestle. The Godfather will offer chicks to the wrestlers, and they will actually say, hey, we can either fight, or we can actually, you get the chicks and, you know, I get like we get to win the match. So that was his thing. Even that's how he wins the Intercontinental Championship from Goldust, and that was like he made the main title that like Charles Wright or the Godfather had. So like they had to tone it down a little bit, and then yeah, they will move it to the Godfather to actually the Right to Censor, a group that was caused to make fun of these censorship associations that were trying to like take the character down. Vince fought for him. They said that he tried his best for the characters to survive in this kind of situations. Unfortunately, like again, they had to tone it down, and then he became part of this group with Balvines. You got to see Ivory, Bull Buchanan, and Stevie Richards from ECW, and then he became the Godfather. So they changed the name, and he says that was in the lowest point in his WWE career, because he did not enjoy this, he did not want to be part of this family. And it's understandable, because again, he goes and says, the Godfather was an extension of myself. I was having fun every single day. It was really cool. It was really exciting to come to work. This was not work. Although like he was about to leave, and they put actually the tag team titles with the Bull Buchanan He headlined a few WrestleManias also with him against the Hardys, against the Dudleys, against Edge and Christian. So he was kind of having like a good run with this. But then, you know, they tried to replicate this with like a more toned down version, you know, like a version of the Godfather that wasn't as racy as the other one. Didn't turn out to be that great, so that's why again he just stopped doing it and he just was released at that time. These are like the main incarnations of like Charles Wright, is like the Godfather and Papa Shango. If you ask me, I love the Godfather. The Godfather, just the music, as you guys can hear it, you know, it was really cool. It was just a guy that like just, you know, accentuate fun. He will come out and the place will go nuts just because you know that you were having a good time. You're gonna see hot chicks. You're just gonna see, you know, a little bit of fun jokes, you know, pushing the envelope, like I said before. That was really cool. Papa Shango was like a scary character. Kids did not like him at all. That was the good thing. That was the perception, and that was the, you know, that when you're portraying a good character, that if you get a reaction like that, you know, that you're doing your job right. But you know, Godfather for me, that's the main reason he went to the Hall of Fame, just because of how crucial he was for like, you know, WWE Universe during the Attitude Era. Like I said, Papa Shango could have been better if they would have actually gone with that idea of making him serious, making him like a threat. But because actually he could wrestle. Not maybe like the best wrestler in the world, but he could wrestle. Death Valley Driver, one of the few guys that actually trying to use that move, he did that, so like that was a really cool thing. They mentioned family, like the great friendship that they had with like Savio Vega, with The Undertaker, with Rikishi, with Yokozuna, with all of them, with like also Paul Bearer, like the Bond Street crew. They said there was no animosity with the Clique. They said, hey, I was as good as friends as like I am with like my guys, which is a fun group, we just love to drink, we just like to party, we just love to have like endless nights. So that's really cool, you know, we get to see like this picture that was actually before the retirement of The Undertaker. I think the Roberg also like cover, that was Survivor Series 2021. So like they say that like they had the whole building just for them, and those are the COVID days still. So like Vince just had like these guys actually tested, and then they just drank the whole night. Really cool for them, you know. We know that the big friendship that like The Undertaker and Charles Wright, the Godfather, have. And then he said, you know, when he first met The Undertaker, he says, you're too white to not have any tattoos. So for that reason, like he actually was the first one that suggested The Undertaker should have tattoos. He was right there in Las Vegas when he got his first tattoo. Later on, The Undertaker will develop like the whole arm, and in both of his arms he has both sleeves and all of that, but that actually helped him out the character because of the ministry, the darkness that he portrayed. But like the Godfather was like the main reason like why The Undertaker has tattoos. So there you go. If you guys are settled out, you can blame the Godfather. So a really cool story, and also you can see like the friendship that both of them have. Really interesting, really nice, really cool thing, like to see the close friendship that like, again both of these guys have. And they were mentioned like, you know, like they had matches together, they were on tags together, and the main reason that, you know, he pursued this career of wrestling, it was also because of The Undertaker. Both learned from each other. They love each other until this day. They still talk. He mentions that he has like a really big part in like the cannabis business. Like he also is like a good thing with like Rob Van Dam. Like they both are trying to show the world like the positive effects that like cannabis have. It's not just like a drug, it's nothing that is negative for you. They're actually trying to show the world that it can be really beneficial, you know, for a lot of people. I know he mentions to Stone Cold, maybe it's not for you, but for me, it helps me out. It shows like that I'm improving my health. I'm not drinking anymore. And he says that like he has a lot to do with like the positive effects of cannabis. He says that he has a lot of business in it. He actually goes and speaks about the benefits of like cannabis. So that's something that he's doing on the side. And every time, occasional, he does like wrestling appearances, a lot of interviews. You know, they mentioned right there like the positive effect that Papa Shango could have had, and he did for a lot of people. So that was like the reason why he's staying in WWE. So really cool stuff. You know, he mentioned like here like the beginnings of the Godfather, like we say in the picture. He a very humble man, you know, man that like enjoys like his time in wrestling. He says, I respect the business. I was not, you know, born with this love of professional wrestling, but at least, you know, I always knew that I had to do my best, and that the fact that I was able to be successful at it is really great because he does respect the business. You can really tell that. He says that was only my second choice because I could always go and be just a bodyguard, like I mentioned before, like the nightlife, the strip clubs. But every time, like, he always did the best for wrestling, and he ended up being pretty successful at it. Like I said, Intercontinental Champion, he was European Champion, also like a tag champion, so hey, and he's a Hall of Fame guy, so like we gotta respect that, you know. Everybody just remembers the Godfather. Man, if you've been in professional wrestling, or at least you've been a fan long enough, you remember Papa Shango, you remember Kama. If you actually watch the early days of Monday Night Raw, you know, right there is like both guys right there, like how it's like he's about to be 60 right now. He says because of the effects that like he has on the cannabis business and all of that, how he's been taking that, he actually feels better than ever. So that's really cool for him. He didn't, you know, suffer the negative effects of like the life from post-professional wrestling. You know, he has like the speech right there in the Hall of Fame, and he says that like the only thing he regrets in his life in pro wrestling is the fact that like when he did the speech at the Hall of Fame is how he forgot to thank his wife. You know, he said, my wife had a lot to do with the character of the Godfather. He pretty much came out with everything, and I forgot because actually at that same time I was actually celebrating my grandkid like a birthday, and I wanted everybody to just say happy birthday to him. It was working out, I got the crowd, everybody was reacting to it. Unfortunately, I got caught up in the moment because I never been scripted. That's the one thing that he mentions, and he says because of that I wasn't able to actually thank my wife, and I forgot about it. So he actually takes the camera and says, hey honey, I'm sorry, but I love you to death, but I'm sorry that I actually let you down on that. So pretty cool stuff. You know, Godfather also forgot about the wife, so you know, it happens, we all messed up in our lives. But really great to see, you know, this guy, and I'll get to know a little bit more of the guy. Like I said, like the beginnings of it, why the character never worked for, you know, Papa Shango, why Kama never worked, but why the Godfather actually worked. So you get to see that, like, you know, on nowadays we won't be able to pull on any type of character like the Godfather. And you see, like, that's kind of sucks, at least for me as a fan. Why? Because I cannot enjoy those beautiful days of professional wrestling when everything was allowed. Now, you know, society tends to be a little bit more sensitive about everything, so you gotta be careful with every single thing that you said, and you gotta be really careful again how to push the envelope. So that's the one of like the negative effects, but like that's why if you ever want to enjoy professional wrestling to the top, you gotta go see the Attitude Era, because those were the days you can actually do absolutely anything and everything in one shot. Family, that's what we have for, like, you know, this episode of the Broken Skull Sessions. Please go watch it. Really cool stuff. He also mentions like Kurt Hennig and how he made you gargle every time you got a shot, because it was like Mr. Perfect, another guy that was beloved and respected, you know, among his peers in the locker room. So really cool stuff. Please go watch the episode. Thank you so very much for being with me. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications. We always put content, like I said. We will have NWA Power. They're gonna have a pay-per-view tomorrow, so we're gonna be actually talking about all of that. Nick Aldis against Trevor Murdoch, gonna be Serena Deeb against Camille, and also like the return of Kaylee Ray, all with like alongside like Taryn Terrell going against Thunder Rosa and Melina. So it's gonna be a really cool event. You know, normally we don't do NWA Power, but when there's an opportunity, we take care of it. So thank you, family, one more time. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook on Robreak, the original Robreak on Instagram, and the OG Robreak on Twitter. I'm Juanzo, and we, like I said, we'll see you tomorrow. So have a great evening, and all I can say is,